What is going on, everyone? And welcome back to another interesting video. I don't know how popular this one is going to be, but people have been asking me, what are my game settings in BDO? Because one, when you first start this game, you have like everything popping up on your screen. It's actually kind of annoying. I wish more games would have things are off by default, but it's on. So I wanted to go through a quick rundown of all my settings, so for all of you guys who are interested, you guys can see it. Maybe get some actual tips from all of this, and a few things that I could recommend for you guys. And there are some weird settings, and that you have to like do 2 or 3 steps just to get it to work. And so, yeah, a lot of you guys have been telling me that the quality has been pretty solid. I've been asking in some previous videos, like, I've been testing a lot of different things, and so we seem to be on a good setting right now, and I wanted to show you guys what it was all about. So what do you guys play on, actually? So I'm just curious, what do you guys have? Leave that in the comments. So let's start off with the settings. I don't know how many people actually use presets. Like, obviously they probably help, but everyone has a different computer, and especially if you're on console, I don't even think this is an option. But anyway, just wanted to give you guys a quick rundown on what I have. I'll keep in mind I'm sitting in a town, that's why my FPS is lower. But anyway, so back in the day, if you guys have watched my playthroughs for a while, I used to play on remastered, and honestly, it's just really bright. And when you're grinding, and in this game, just in general, during the daytime, sometimes it's just really bright, and at night times it's just really dark, which is, you know, kind of good realism. But anyway, I found that when I'm both recording and non-recording, very high and high just seems to be like the perfect balance, whereas remastered is a little too bright. It looks good, and like if I'm playing on high, that's fine, but anything under like medium and stuff, it just kind of looks a little wonky. And if you're playing on low and very low, it's kind of like RuneScape graphics. So people always said that, you know, graphics don't matter. And in this game, I kind of disagree. Other games, yeah, sure, maybe. But this game, like Black Desert, is a really nice looking game. And a lot of us have noticed that. Plus, skill animations, those are so cool. So that's why I can't, like, I want to try to have a balance of not looking too ugly, but have a decent balance of FPS on the side. Obviously, that's a little different depending on your computer specs and all that stuff. But I think after testing a lot of this, I think medium is probably the lowest people should go. Obviously, I get that if you're strictly PvPing, then you're playing on low and very low. I get that FPS kind of thing. But if you're just like your casual player, anything above medium is probably good, and this is what I have. Ultra is for people who like screenshots and like slow like graphic stuff. It's not really meant to be played on. If you play on Ultra, you kind of have a really need a good computer for that. And then remastered is a good balance, but once again, that is really bright and you have to mess with the settings a lot. So another thing we have is anti-aliasing. TAA is very pixely. If you don't apply it, it just, I don't know, can't really tell the difference. But I've personally found that FXAA looks pretty nice, and we'll talk about this setting in a bit, because there's another one that we get into where it's basically the fidelity thing, where I'll show you in a bit. So these are what I have. If you like taking screenshots with the background, make sure to turn the depth of field on or off, just based on what you like. A lot of these are mostly seasonals, like real life seasons. In the winter, it's just snows and stuff, so that's what I have. So yeah, optimization, auto frame optimization. People with different computers, if you can't hit 60 or you're just like bouncing back and forth, you might want to turn this on. Now, this is one of the questions that I've gotten a lot. How do you have the AMD Fidelity on with FXAA and not in remastered? So basically the way this works is if you turn this on, like if you were to try it, the AMD thing, if you were to pick it, it would set you to remastered and TAA. We don't want that. TAA is very pixely and it's just kind of wonky. If you like it, you like it, but I don't. So what you do is you pick this one, right? And then when you set, before you hit like the apply button, I know there's like apply and confirm. You want to change it to that one, like the FidelityFX. And then before you hit it, apply to anything, then you would set it to very high. Like you change this, it would be remastered by default and TAA. So what you want to do is change the setting and then change all these and then apply and confirm. You don't just apply, confirm everything. It's weird. Why does it have that? I don't know. I wish they would change it. I've literally left a comment and talked to some people about that, and they're just like, yeah, we'll get to it eventually, soon TM. But anyway, so if you want to play with this setting on and non-remastered and a different setting over anti-aliasing over here, you basically click them all before hitting apply, then you apply it after they're set, and that's how you do it. So things that I think are good to have are like attack decisions on, miss effects. This is especially good for both like PvP and PvE. Just having like indicators on screen, and this goes for like every MMO as well. So you might want to have those on. Performance optimization, it's kind of wonky actually. I mean, I've had this on and off. I just turned it off. And once again, this is for like people who have like lower computer ends or something, or you're strictly focusing on one thing or the other. You could have that on. Character optimization, I think this one is not bad to have. Like, it's, once again, it's kind of like how far do you want to see things, and generally for PvP, because this game is a bit of PvP, you kind of want to see things happening before it like happens, because this is a fast-paced game. So if you have that on for PvP, it's pretty good. But if you're doing anything else like grinding, PvEing, it doesn't matter. This hide other adventurer settings, some of you guys may have tested this at like bosses and stuff. Now, the way this works, and when it says depending on the situation, it means that let's say you're at Garmoth, right? And there's a lot of people. It'll automatically hide all those people, and you only see the boss. However, even if you have the setting on, it has to reach a certain number of people within the area. We don't know that number, but it just like if there's a lot of people and it might tank your FPS, it's definitely good to leave on at all times. And I believe the hotkey is like Shift F5 if you're on keyboard and mouse. And so Shift F5, always just keep the setting on if you go to bosses, and it'll automatically just hide people when there's a lot of them. So camera vision range is basically field of view. I wish they would just call it that, but this is field of view. Keep it at, I would always recommend just keeping it at 100. And yeah, that's about it. Pets and workers, basically these things right here, pets and workers. There's really no need to have these on. Trust me, I've been playing this game for like 7 years, and you don't look at it. Trust me on that. Having the pets might be nice, but at the same time, you don't really need it. If you're grinding spots with high density and there's like your fast clearing rotations, you want to see what they're looting, and that's the only time I think I would show it. But if you, after a while, you just kind of get an idea of what's already happening. So I personally don't have mine on. This has been a hot topic for many years now. As you guys know, if you play in full screen, it uncaps your FPS. That's good. If you are a content creator, it sometimes does not good. So one thing I like to do when I full screen window, especially like when I'm recording or if I'm streaming, or like you see a lot of streamers, right? They play mostly in full screen windowed, and then when they're PvPing or something, they'll swap it back to full screen. I I kind of wish that it was not so complicated to uncap your FPS in full screen windowed. There's a way you have to go through your NVIDIA settings if you have an NVIDIA card. AMD is, I don't actually know how to do it for AMD side, but I assume it's like the same thing. It's just an option, and it's like VSync off in global settings. So yeah, the UI scale is something that I've definitely been playing with a lot more. And one thing that people have been talking about more often is how well the crop mode is. And I've been playing with it a lot. So this is what it would look like if I were to apply it. So you see how this crop mode, you could see more. Like in theory, you're supposed to be able to see more of the like edges of it. That's how I understand it. So like you see how it shows over here, it was a little bit further back with the width side. And personally, I don't think it's bad. My understanding of how it used to work was I thought people did it just to get more FPS, and that it does do that. But I don't know. It just felt kind of wonky for me. And so I do think this is a good setting, but I don't know. When I'm recording, do people even like seeing the black or gray bars? I think that's just a little weird. I think it's good if you're just playing without it. Like if you're not a content creator or streamer, whatever, YouTuber, I would definitely recommend looking into this one if you want more FPS or just see like a wider vision. It's kind of like having a widescreen monitor in a way. So, you know, what's funny is displays quality, and this thing is basically the same thing. I wish it wasn't as complicated, and well, it's not complicated. It's just the same settings in two different spots. Basically the same things over here again. Usually what I would recommend to most people is turn everything off until you think you need it or you want it, then you turn it on. And so the less garbage on your screen, the better. Because when you first played the game, right, you had all these things popping up on the top of your screen, just like, this person has sold this thingy, this is getting listed for on the market for X amount. No one cares. Even to this day, no one cares. So the less like stuff on your screen, the better. It'll help you, especially like, I know these are like immersive things like snow buildup, blood splatter, blood stains, but at the end of the day, you're not really looking at that. So once again, this is what we talked about earlier, the AMD Fidelity. Personally, I like the quality more than like everything else, but definitely something you guys can play with. Ultra quality is kind of intense. Just keep that in mind. There's actually a lot of filters in this game for like vibrance, and there's like, it changes. That's really cool. Not a lot of games actually have a lot of like color filters. And so this is one of the games that I think is really nice that it has. So personally, vibrance I think is the more realistic one, which I like the most. I always adjust my gamma and contrast a lot, so it really just depends. Some days, like when you're grinding, it's just really bright in some regions, so that's why I mess around with it. Effect opacity is your skill effects, and sometimes, you know, funny story is people always keep this on minimum or maximum. There's barely in between, but I think it is good to play with it, because if you are PvPing, obviously more skill effects equals lower FPS when you're doing that. And if you're trying to min-max, then it matters, but if you don't care, just keep it at max. This game is nice looking, keep it that way. But for me personally, as a person who does a lot of things, a balance with me would be 55. And so I've actually done a few tests before with this. And if you look at like some horse effects, so for example, like I have a tier 10 mythical Pegasus, and it has like the snowy frost thing at his feet. At 100, it's pretty intense to the fact where, or like the point where you can't see the ground as much. So that's why that's like the perfect balance for me. I definitely think it's something everyone should play with. More games really need to have like a color vision aid option. I personally wouldn't be able to tell you what the difference is, but I know this isn't gonna help. Like if you are colorblind and I told you what I see, but if you're colorblind, it will literally make 0 sense to you. So when I've messed around with these, you know how like down here, if you have like a black spit or if you have a rift boss going, usually it's red by default. And if you have a setting on, it'll turn that like red glow into blue. So I personally don't know enough to tell you why it is, but it just changes the colors of like the effects on various things on your UI and some skills. So camera vision range, once again, a lot of these settings are the same thing as in the performance. I wish they would just combine a lot of these settings into one. It would make it a lot easier. So like if you see this, for example, it's like, oh, display quality, nice. Then you see optimization and graphic textures, and like, that's the same thing I just looked at. So yeah, camera vision aid. I would highly recommend everyone turning up the vision range, which is field of view for non-MMO players. Or yeah. Anyway, keep it at 100. All of these are, I honestly, personal preference. If you're using a controller, vibration, you should always have vibration off, by the way. I never even liked it when I was playing on console either, so blur effect doesn't really make anything better. So this is a special tip. It's probably not going to apply to 99% of you, but if you are a content creator, the last thing you want people to feel when they're watching your videos is like they're gonna get a seizure with like bright lights, or they're gonna feel nauseous with like vibration and blur effects. You kind of really want to have all of these off. That's just like a pro tip from me to you. But if you're just playing it by yourself, it's personal preference. Who cares? So yeah, I have all of these off. I personally don't like looking at it either. And then screenshots. This is actually pretty rare. So in most games that I've noticed, when you take a screenshot, right, it'll take it at your current monitor's resolution. The fact that they have options for like 4K, 8K, that's pretty intense actually. And then different formats. This isn't as common. Usually they only have JPEG or PNG. So the fact that you have all of these is pretty nice options as well. PNG from personal experience, and like I work with Photoshop a lot as well when I do YouTube and just graphics for everything myself. PNG is a lot better than JPEG, and BMP is just like not really, you shouldn't, special things if you need it. And everything else is just like watermark stuff, so preference. Okay, so this is something that I've been messing with for the past like 7 years of playing this game. To this day, I still don't even think I've gotten it perfectly, but it works for me. These are what I play at. So if all of you are just like, ooh, the game is too loud or it's too quiet, this is literally what I play at. And when you say the music is too loud, I'm literally playing at like 15%. So I don't know. I mess around with it quite often. And yeah, one thing I would recommend a lot of people do is turn off your fairy and voice volume. So you know how your character like shouts when you're doing abilities? That's cool the first like 2 hours you're playing the game. Now 7 years later, when you hear the same exact thing while you're grinding in circles for hours on end, you really don't want to hear that. So it might be cool the first time, maybe the second time, but not like the 700th time. So fun fact, if you have a fairy, so there are like 4 or 5 different types of fairies, right? I personally have the aloof one, and every fairy has a different voice sound, and so I think that's cool that they have a lot of different voices, and they kind of say different things depending on what your fairy you're having, and they also have a different color they glow. So like the aloof one, it glows blue in my case. I actually didn't know that the other ones had different color glows until someone actually told me and showed me pictures. I was like, oh, that's cool. I just kind of picked the one that I got to a tier 4 at first, and then I was like, okay, we're keeping that one. So just in case you didn't know, if you turn on the fairy and listen to it, all the fairies have a different color and voiceover. And going down to the general settings, these are kind of interesting. Now, these are the ones I would recommend all of you guys turn off. So when you first start the game, all of these settings, everything is on. My best tip for all of you is turn everything off, and then as you start playing the game and you start noticing things that you wish you had, then I would turn it on. If you keep it on by default, you're just going to see everything, and then like the things you want to see, you're probably going to get buried with everything else. So I've messed around with aim assistance on and off. It's generally better to keep it on, but if you have very specific movements and things, then I think you should turn it off. But I think for your average player, just keeping it on is fine. Combat assistance is basically like well, they say it's recommended for new adventurers. They have a little box when you're out in the open. It'll be like, here, this is the skill combo to use X skills, right? So all of you who have been asking me as well, how do I get multiple bars and have everything? Turn the quick slot on, and then you'll get an option to turn on more bars and set those. It's good to have. Simplify UI. I don't know why you would want to simplify it. Like in MMOs, the more you see, the better it is. It's not just this game, it's every game. I guess there are some people that like simple things, and that's cool. But I think for the most part, like the more you see, the better it is. So, and then all these are different fonts and everything. So here's another little tip. You can actually change the font to like whatever you want. It is messing around with the files. You could see some streamers and other YouTubers do it. Personally, I don't recommend it, even though you could. The reasoning why is because it's not that they don't allow it. They do. But sometimes it messes with the game, and sometimes like you'll start crashing if you have like a weird font going on. So I personally prefer to leave it just on the defaults or like the official ones. But if you want to change it to any font you want, you could. Just know that if you start like crashing in game, do like random things more often, it's probably going to be the font. And I talked to some other streamer friends about that, and they were like, yeah, it was the font, and they're like crashing in RBFs and everything. And so it's just like unreplicatable things. So just keep that in mind. If you're crashing and you have a custom font, it's the font. It's weird. Show and hide, all of these personal preferences. I personally have show fairy, hide pets. Once again, this is another setting that is literally in the other settings as well. So a lot of these I would personally recommend keeping. Yeah, a lot of them I have on, so up to you. Do you like to see names of people, the HP bar? These are a lot of PvP stuff as well, so I definitely think it's important. This is one of the biggest setting like tabs I could talk about. My recommendation: turn all of these off, and then there are very few things that I would recommend keeping on. So get alerts for general trade. No one cares. Like if it's your guildies and you want to see if they hit an accessory or anything, like, you know how it tells you this person has obtained or successfully enhanced the pen item, right? You could see that, except this is for like the entire server kind of thing. So I personally think 99% of people don't actually care. The only thing I would recommend keeping on for certain things are Central Market and Horse and Worker Exchange. So if you're trying to go for a very specific thing, like let's say a Pegasus, at least on NA, the Pegasus is probably one of the hardest dream horses to get. It'll tell you when one is listed, so I think this one is important to get, and if you're looking for a very specific item on the market that you can't just right out buy, then keep this one on. But other than that, like, no one cares about all this. And then once again, friends list on, off. Do you want to see it? World map opening styles. I personally have mine on the default because you see some other people's when they open the map and it's like sideways, especially when people make a guide video and they have their map rotated sideways like that. And it's like, okay, what does this even mean? And so you're just like, okay, let me figure this out. And then, so when I do it, it's always default. When you open your map, this is how it looks by default. And so, for example, like, let's say I wanted to show you where this lake was by Glish, right? This is actually what it would be by default. And so I could just point to where it is by these things. And so when you see other videos of people and it's like, oh, you just go zoom in over here, and you're just like, what is that? How do I read this? So yeah, I personally like default settings on that one. And I mean, once again, it just makes things easier for me and you. Personal preferences, miscellaneous, more personal preferences. These two are important. So navigation, path, land, and water. Anyone who's ever done any boating stuff or just like sailing in the ocean, you really want smooth on instead of exact. So here's the thing. If I were to give you an example, let's say I wanted to go from Ilia Island to Lima Island. When you go exact, it will like hard like beeline you to this one. But in the smooth one, it'll just like take you there without you crashing too much into rocks and stuff. So it, for the most part, I think it's a little bit better because it'll navigate you away from obstacles in the ocean. Whereas the exact one will just get you there from point A to B the fastest. However, if you AFK and there's a rock in your path, it will hard stop you there. So I think personally smooth is a lot better, and you won't crash as much into random things. Okay, so navigation guide, this is how it works. You see these arrows right here? When you like right click something, you could turn it into different things. That's cool. Personal preferences and interface UI changes, key binds, and everything. So yeah, that's basically all my settings. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. This is like a 27-minute video. Oh my god, to just go over settings. And usually, I don't know, sometimes people actually like seeing what you have, and then some people are just like, oh, 27 minutes of settings, who cares? And I get that. So once again, I knew this video is not going to be for everyone. But if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you have a fantastic day. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I like making videos to help newer and returning players get back into the game, and people who just like to improve and get better at the game. These are what the videos I try to make are for. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a fantastic day.